Okay, so here's something I think a lot of us run into, right? Whether you're coaching, teaching, or even just learning something yourself, you've got people, maybe even yourself, who are super keen to, play the game, do the main thing.
Jump right into the action.
Exactly. But then comes the groundwork, the drills, the stuff that really builds the skill, and suddenly the energy just, well, dips.
Oh, totally. It's that classic dilemma. Our sources today really zoom in on, especially looking at tennis coaches facing this exact issue.
Right. We're diving into this really great account of a tennis workshop that tried something different. And we're pairing that with some science on movement and learning. So the mission for this deep dive is basically, how can we maybe reframe that boring practice, make it less of a grind, spark some actual excitement, and get better results? How do we unlock that internal drive?
It's such a key question, isn't it? Because the desire to improve is usually there, that competitive edge.
Yeah.
But the path, sometimes it feels like pulling teeth. One coach in the source material just laid it out. They just want to play.
Yeah.
It's hard to build movement into the time available and keep them motivated.
Yeah, that nails it. The fun of the game versus the, let's face it, sometimes tedious work needed to get good at it.
And that's the scene. Evening, floodlit courts, players maybe a bit tired.
Yeah.
And in walks this guy, Terence Hughes.
And apparently he doesn't start with forehands or backhands. He just looks around and says something like, I don't know much about tennis, but it looks like a martial art, like Star Wars.
Ah, yeah, imagine hearing that. Instantly changes the vibe, right?
Totally. It's visual, unexpected. Suddenly it's not just tennis practice, it's cooler.
It's a frame shift. You're not just hitting a fuzzy yellow ball anymore.
Yeah.
You're thinking about movement, maybe balance, precision, maybe even, well, the force.
Okay, so let's get into this experiment they ran. What actually happened?
Wait, so get this. They ditched the net entirely. Nope. And they introduced lightsabers, probably just pool noodles or something similar, but the name matters.
Okay.
Then add partners, some upbeat music, and this whole idea of channeling the force.
So what were they doing for 20 minutes?
Really specific tennis movements, actually, but framed differently. Things like spiraling steps for recovery after a shot.
Crucial stuff.
Those quick diagonal bursts to cover the court, and all the turning, jumping, landing involved in, like a good split step.
But it felt like Jedi training.
Kind of, like these little choreographed duels set to music. And the result, according to the account, total focus, big sweaty grins, and zero complaining about doing movement drills.
That's pretty remarkable. From resisting drills to loving them in 20 minutes.
It really shows how powerful framing is. The movements were the same, fundamentally, but the experience was transformed just by changing the story around it, and the science actually backs this up quite neatly.
Yeah, let's dig into that. Our sources talk about this motor learning and fun idea. What's going on there?
Well, basically, when something feels like play, your brain releases more dopamine. We often think of dopamine as just pleasure, but it's also crucial for motivation and, importantly, for memory consolidation.
Ah, so the fun actually helps you learn better.
Exactly. That dopamine surge helps solidify the neural pathways for those movements. One source mentioned a study suggesting this playful learning might even create stronger memory traces for foundational skills than, say, learning under match pressure.
Interesting. So fun isn't just fluff, it's functional.
Pretty much. And it links up with this other concept, embodied cognition, and using metaphors, like calling it Jedi training.
Right. The Star Wars thing again?
It's not just cute. Thinking about it that way, using that metaphor, actually helps the brain engage with the movements differently. It gives the physical actions a richer mental context, making the neural connections stronger. It's learning through story and feeling, not just mechanics.
And there's a physical conditioning angle too, right? Even though it felt like play.
Absolutely. All that continuous movement, bursts of activity, then maybe a slight pause, changing direction, it mimics high-intensity interval training, HIIT.
Ah, okay.
So while they're having fun, maybe pretending to wield lightsabers, they're also getting a really relevant physical workout, improving the kind of fitness they actually need on the tennis court. Aerobic, anaerobic, the works.
So it's ticking multiple boxes, motivation, learning, and fitness, just by reframing it.
Precisely. It's a much more palatable way to get that conditioning work done. Now, the sources also explore something else, which seems a bit backwards at first.
Oh, what's that?
The idea of sometimes stopping playing the game altogether.
Wait, stop playing tennis to get better at tennis.
Kind of, yeah. Temporarily. To focus only on the movement itself. Think of a musician, maybe, spending time just on scales and finger exercises, not playing full pieces.
Okay, I see the analogy, but why? Isn't playing the game the best practice?
Not always, especially for refining fundamental movement. The argument is that isolating the biomechanics, the footwork, the balance, the recovery steps can actually speed up skill learning and, really importantly, help prevent injuries.
How so?
Well, think about it. When you're mid-rally, your brain is juggling so much. The ball, your opponent, strategy, the score.
Yeah, my footwork is probably the last thing on my mind.
Exactly. It's hard to consciously refine how you're moving. But take the ball away, remove the pressure of winning the point, and you create this space for deliberate practice. You can actually feel your movement.
Right. And this connects to brain science, too, doesn't it? It's something about rewiring.
Yeah, neuroplastic rewiring. One source mentions research suggesting that even just 10-15 minutes of focused movement drills where you're really concentrating on the quality can boost the brain's ability to learn those patterns more effectively than hours of just, running around thoughtlessly during a game.
Quality over quantity.
Definitely. You're basically programming your nervous system more efficiently.
Yeah.
Nailing that split-step timing, grooving those recovery patterns.
And the injury prevention part. How does movement-only practice help there?
By doing drills without the high intensity or load of a match, things like shadow swings or practicing footwork patterns slowly, you can spot potential issues. Maybe a slight instability in the knee or a poor balance during a turn.
Ah, find the little glitches before they become big problems under pressure.
Exactly. There was a fascinating data point mentioned about NBA players significantly cutting down non-contact injuries just by dedicating around 20% of practice time to movement prep. It builds a more robust, efficient movement foundation.
Makes sense. Build the chassis properly before you try to race the car.
Perfect analogy. And there's one more benefit. Tactical clarity.
Tactical. How does movement practice help tactics without a ball?
By removing the ball, you remove the immediate focus on hitting it or winning the point, what they call outcome fixation. This lets players develop a better internal sense, a better feel for court positioning, for balance, for optimal spacing relative to where the ball might go.
So they learn to anticipate and position better, almost subconsciously.
That's the idea. There was a study cited with junior players showing that those who did movement-only training actually improved their court coverage more than those who just did live rallies.
Wow. Okay, so taking a step back from the game can actually propel you forward in the game.
It seems counterintuitive, but yeah, it's about sharpening the fundamental tools. Which brings us nicely to this coaching idea they called Jedi training mode.
I love that name. So what is it?
It's basically packaging these focused, ball-free movement sessions into short, intense blocks. You frame it explicitly. Okay, team, we're going into Jedi training mode for 10 minutes. Level up your movement skills.
Ah, gamifying the grind.
Totally. It gives it purpose, makes it feel like progress, not punishment. And the promised payoff is great. When you go back to playing with the ball, your game will glitch less.
Glitch less.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So relatable. Fewer awkward movements, fewer times caught out of position.
Exactly. It reinforces that your movement is the operating system your tennis skills run on. If the OS is smooth, the apps run better.
And there were a couple of quotes that really stood out, weren't there?
Oh yeah, powerful ones. The game reveals what you practice.
Okay, it's straightforward enough.
And the follow-up. The practice reveals what you neglect.
Oof, that hits home. If you never practice recovery steps properly, the game will expose that weakness.
Precisely. And thinking back to Hughes in his Star Wars intro, it's like he was tapping into that idea early on, maybe not explicitly saying practice reveals neglect, but implying that the potential, the force, is within the player's movement itself.
The force is you. Go let it out.
Yeah, something like that. Let it out through focused, maybe even fun practice. Don't neglect the foundation.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What are the big takeaways for you listening in?
Well, first, I think it's the sheer power of how you frame things. Using stories, metaphors, playfulness. Like the Jedi training isn't just fluff. It can genuinely boost motivation and make learning stick. It helps you find that force inside.
Right. Tapping into intrinsic motivation makes a huge difference. And the second big takeaway.
It's the surprising value of sometimes stepping away from the full complexity of the game, whatever your game is, to deliberately practice the underlying components, like isolating movement in tennis.
Yeah, that focused fundamental practice can accelerate skill development and maybe even keep you safer, less prone to injury.
Absolutely. It shows that sometimes the best tools aren't the obvious ones. Creativity, understanding a bit of brain science, strategic simplification, these can be incredibly effective.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on. Where in your own world, your work, your hobbies, your learning, might you be so focused on just playing the game, on getting the immediate results, that you're maybe neglecting the foundational skills underneath? Where could applying a bit of temporary Jedi training mode, focusing purely on the fundamentals, unlock a whole new level of performance and maybe even make the game itself feel, well, more effortless and enjoyable down the line?